welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, February 20th, 2006. We do have a quorum with all members of council present. The City Council seems to be discussing the next item on the agenda right now, and that would be the disposition of minutes. Let's take these one at a time.
I move the accept the minutes of the regular session of December 19th.
You may wish to hold up on this for a second. While Director Hunter, I understand there's some questions as to can you vote on minutes that you were not there for.
Usually you don't vote on minutes if you're not present.
Okay. Yes, Carol.
I have a question about that. What if you had an all-new council? How could you vote on your minutes from a previous year?
You don't?
Well,
29th, I wasn't there.
okay.
Oh, December.
How would the law have it proceed?
Which minutes are you talking about?
Well, we have two on our agenda. Debbie is the ones from the 29th, the one in question. So why don't we take them one at a time?
Well, the ones from the 29th, there's a ruling from my office of previous form. There are people here
We'll vote on those so they can accept it. Okay. We're going to break this up. So, Paul, would you begin?
I move we accept the minutes from December 19th, 2005.
Motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of December 19th, 2005?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes are accepted.
Mr. President, I move we accept the minutes from the special session held December 29th, 2005.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those have been accepted. Communications. Are there any communications anyone would wish to share with council? Have none. Reports and communications from other elected officials. Or let's go to the city auditor first.
No report.
Mayor Abel?
No report.
No report. Law Director Hunter? No report. May be a record. Ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 0206, an ordinance granting a revocable license for use of the city right-of-way to Mancan Inc. for a freestanding sign to be attached to an existing pole located at 490 Richland Avenue. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move to table 0206.
Second.
The reason I'm making this motion is at the request of Councilmember Patterson, who has been out to look at the site. This request for a revocable license is for a sign that extends 14 feet into the right-of-way. And her request is that I go to the people and ask them if it's feasible or possible to move the sign back out of the right-of-way. Several members of council have had a chance to go look at it. The signs out on Richland Avenue are not aligned. They're all over the place, and this one does encroach pretty far into the right-of-way. So it would be my intention, after talking with them, to bring back a report so that we could bring this off the table and have that information before we vote.
Is there further discussion? All those, we have a motion and a second to table ordinance 0206. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is tabled. Ordinance 0306, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 0306. Second. This ordinance has two parts to it. First of all, we'll be appropriating $40,000 to the Indigent Driver Fund, which is part of the municipal courts funding. This is a fund which provides professional services for alcohol treatment programs for DUI offenses. The other part is $10,000 to the Athens City Enhancement Fund. These are funds proposed to go to community food initiatives for several programs, including a composting program that they are beginning in the city, hopefully to expand into the county.
Further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 0306?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Now ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 0506, an ordinance authorizing a development agreement with SJB Development, Inc. Ordinance 0606, an ordinance granting a revocable license to Larry Lucas, owner, Thornmore, Inc., 7 Pomeroy Road, to allow the replacement of the face panel of an existing sign on the city right-of-way. Ordinance 0706, an ordinance authorizing the service safety director to provide a sewer tap for the extension of city sewer service beyond the corporate limit and requiring that certain conditions be met. Ordinance 0906, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 37 Landscaping Regulations, Section 37.08 Commercial, Institutional, and Industrial Landscaping. Member Weil.
I'd like to move to amend 0906.
Second.
Okay, this discussion was took place last committee meeting. Part of the discussion at the last meeting of this was how to evaluate the amount of improvements in the section A where it talks about any alterations, renovations, or improvements to the building that cost exceed 50%. What I wanted to add to that, wanted to change is add of the Athens County Auditor's valuation. Part of the discussion from the committee was, should I ramble on more? Okay. Sorry. Was how to determine the price of these things in terms of improvements. I had discussions with Steve Pearson, and I'm reiterating what was at the last committee meeting, and Alvy McWilliams of the Tree Commission. And I guess the consensus was this would be easy to do because the county commissioner's, county auditor's site and evaluation in terms of tax money is online. It'd be easy to just get that and find a price on the thing. So this is one way to quantify how much those improvements are.
Further discussion on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment as stated.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. Ordinance 1006, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance and ordinance 08405, authorizing structural repairs at the Columbus Road Fire Department. Ordinance 1106, an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 1206, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance.
Bill?
Yes.
12?
Yes.
I'd like to move to amend that.
Okay.
Okay, this section basically is changing appropriations. Section 1, the first paragraph, a bullet there saying $4,514 plus interest of the Evelyn Lukes Trust Fund. I'd like to, with the fund balance to be used for beautification at the community center. I'd like to basically strike that out. The reason for that is that looking back in 1994 when this fund was created, the intent of it was for beautification with no more than $1,000 to be taken out of principal at any given year, calendar year. The reference to that, again, I brought that up at the last committee meeting, I think the Finance and Personnel Committee. The reference to it is 09194, and it was section 4 of that particular ordinance. The intent really is to take small pockets of money and actually beautify the city. Part of the conversation was to put an ordinance forward in the next meeting, I hope, and this will probably end up on a committee meeting, Finance and Personnel, for the beautification day, which is being put together by the Men's Water Polo Club or team. But I want to wait till they come back with a website so we know we can talk to them.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend ordinance 1206 as stated. Further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been amended and now read for the first time. Ordinance 1306, an ordinance authorizing repair of the Sunset Drive slips, project 210, 212, and 215. Member Phillips.
Flowers.
I'm sorry.
That's right. Mr. President, I move to amend ordinance 1306.
Second.
The reason for the amendment is that the bids came in on the project and they are lower than estimated. So the appropriation, instead of being $359,544, is going to be $300,000. I gave you a copy of that section 2, highlighted it, and then also on the next page was the then breakdown of that number for each of the slips. You can see down there at the bottom of the email. And that's the reason for the amendment.
Further discussion? Paul?
This is a very nice amendment.
When she told me earlier that she was doing it, I was trying to think of one other occasion in 18 years of sitting around here that somebody amended to lower the cost of construction projects. Duly noted, Annie. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the amendment as stated?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance 1306 is now amended and read for the first time. Now ordinances for first reading. O-1506, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a revolving loan fund administration agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Development. Member Wild.
I'd like to put O-1506 under suspension of rules.
I'm sorry?
What? Yes, we did.
Second.
This essentially is a, as you say, an authorization. You can see that the wordage on here is for the revolving loan fund. The deadline of this is actually, I've been told, is the 17th of this month, so we're already behind. But I'm told that they'll accept it at a later date, so I want to get it up and moving.
Okay, and we would probably need to amend it to add an emergency clause.
Do we have to do that? Okay. I move that we amend it to an emergency clause, if that's the case.
Well, let's do two things at a time. Let's do the emergency clause first,
Okay.
if you would.
Okay. I'll move that we put an emergency clause on.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, for the reasons stated.
For the reasons that we're past the deadline and this is necessary.
Okay. So further discussion on amending it to add an emergency clause of 1506. All those in favor of amending O-1506 for an emergency clause?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been amended.
I move we suspend rules on O-1506.
Second.
Okay, this, as I stated before, the deadline was February 17th. This is essentially the administration agreement we have with the revolving loan fund. This is for businesses and the CDBG, Community Development Block Grants monies. This has to be done periodically. I guess it's up for a renewal and we're behind.
Further discussion on suspension of the rules on ordinance 1506. All those, yes, Paul?
One more thing. I think we had a discussion, I think Jim was talking about having Gary Seeley come and talk to us sometime in the near future, maybe the next Finance Committee meeting about this, so we're up to date on it since it's new amendments, right?
Mr. Seeley is the director of the Economic Development Corporation, who is the local agency who handles this for us. So I thought I'd schedule that at one of the scheduling meetings.
Okay.
All those in favor of suspension of the rules on ordinance 1506?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules of council have been suspended.
I move adoption of O-1506.
Second.
I see I got all my timings wrong. As with this grant, I don't think there's much more to add except we have to get it done.
Is there further discussion? All in favor of adoption of ordinance 1506?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted, amended, suspended. Ordinance 1606, an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year bill and declaring an emergency. Member Weil.
This essentially is to pay for some lighting bills. American Electric Power says we owe them some money from last year. I will not suspend rules on this.
What a way to... You don't think we'll pull the plug?
I hope not.
Okay.
No, we'll get candles.
Ordinance, further discussion. Ordinance 1706, an ordinance authorizing the adoption of an agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, Inc., and the City of Athens, Ohio police officers concerning wages and working conditions and declaring an emergency. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move that we consider ordinance 1706 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
This is a labor agreement with the patrol officers of the our police department. They're operating under an out-of-date agreement, and this would just bring them into compliance with a new agreement if we put it into effect as soon as possible.
Is there further discussion on suspension of the rules only? All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 1706?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 1706.
Second.
I'm going to ask the law director to just give us a few details about this labor agreement before we vote on it.
The labor agreement is with the police officers in the police department, and we still have outstanding reach agreements with the communications officers and the lieutenants. We've had long time negotiations with the police department, so it's basically a status quo contract. It is averages a 4% salary increase over a 3-year agreement in consideration for the police officers agreeing to phase out the longevity with the city. So existing police officers will continue to have longevity, but new hires will not be eligible for longevity, and that's the two major features of it. It is an increase premium over settlements that we've reached with other unions, because we are essentially buying out of the longevity of the police officers.
We go up to adoption now?
I just have a
Madam
question.
Phillips?
Mr. President, it says in here that it's attached and incorporated in the ordinance, and I would just like to have a copy of it or see a copy of it. I don't see it attached here, so. Okay, well, I'd just like to be able to take a look at it.
Further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 1706?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 1806, an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations for lane Hanning for property located outside the corporate limit but within 3-mile jurisdiction to allow a minor lot split. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, this ordinance approves the variances that were recommended to us by the Athens City Planning Commission. The property is in the plains, and the variances really are dealing with lot size, the new requirements for subdivisions. If there is no curb and gutter, there are requirements for very large lot sizes. So the Planning Commission looked this over. These lots are consistent with the size of nearby lots in that area. So they recommended that we grant these variances.
Further discussions? Ordinance 1906, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the State Route 682 Union Street widening project, number 209. Member Flowers.
Mr. President, this is an ordinance. If council will recall, 2 weeks ago, I suspended the rules on ordinance 1406 and we adopted allowing the LPA agreement. And then this ordinance will be pushing the bidding along for that project. So.
Further discussion? Ordinance 2006, an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street from Union Street to State Street on Saturday, May 20th, 2006, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the International Street Fair. Member Flowers.
Mr. President, this is an ordinance closing this portion of the street in order to enable the International Street Fair, which has been going on for a number of years. And it seems to be a pretty positive event, so no problem closing the street down for that, and I hope to get out to it this year.
One of my favorites. Further discussion. Ordinance 2106, an ordinance closing a portion of Union Street from Court to College Street from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, April 22nd, 2006, for a street fair in celebration of Earth Day. Member Flowers.
Again, Mr. President, this is another street closing for another annual event that has a positive influence on the community, and hopefully we'll be closing the street down for that as well.
Other discussion. A one-reading resolution, R0306, a resolution indicating the services the City of Athens will provide for the proposed annexation of an area along East State Street owned by SJB Development, Inc., of approximately 13.341 acres as requested by the annexation petitioners. This is introduced by Councilmember Phillips and Bain. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of R0306. There are several steps in the annexation process, and this is one of the pieces we have to go through. The petitioners have filed their petition with the county commissioners. Before the commissioners can release it, we have to pass a resolution stating that it's our intention, if we do accept it, that we'll provide these city services of water, sewer, police, and fire protection. Then, after they finish their process, it will come back to us again to actually accept that. So all this is saying is that we intend to provide city services.
Further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of Resolution 0306?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution has been adopted. Announcements and other business.
I have an announcement.
Magenta.
Second conversation with council will take place next Monday, 6 o'clock in the mayor's conference room, first floor. And the topic is going to be cleanliness and beautification of the town. And so we're inviting any citizens that are interested in those issues, the, Amy, I think the water polo team. Yeah, they'll be invited to come. Any neighborhood groups, anybody, business people, people who are interested in what the town might want to look like and how we might encourage people to be a little more sensitive to keeping the city clean. So next Monday, 6 o'clock, citizens groups, everyone is invited to talk at this facilitated discussion next week.
Very good. Other announcements, committee meetings next week? Jim?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to schedule a finance and personnel. As Councilmember Weil mentioned, we're planning to invite Mr. Seeley from Economic Development Corporation to come talk about our local handling of this revolving loan fund. And I just want to announce that in 2 weeks, at the next council night, we will continue our tutorial with the auditor regarding financial issues in the council chambers. We'll meet at 6:30, 2 weeks from tonight.
Very good. Amy, did you wish to schedule?
We'll have a transportation committee meeting next week.
Okay. Any others? Nancy?
City services after those three because I have class and I'm giving a test. So I'm late.
We should
No one
probably
else.
have, excuse me, a communications committee, short meeting.
Very good. Opportunity for citizens to, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, we need to announce that we're having a public hearing at the next council meeting also regarding the CDBG money for the CHIPS grant.
Was that next council meeting?
The memo I got from Doug Stanley just said he's been in contact with the corporate council and they talked about scheduling the first hearing on March 6th.
To be announced.
March 6th is what it sounded like.
Yes, March 6th, time to be announced.
Okay. Very good. I look forward to seeing that on the agenda. Now an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that would wish to speak before council? Seeing none and having handled all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned.